Welcome to Local Leverage, your competitive edge in business. Today's guest is proof that with the right mindset and relentless action, financial freedom is always within reach. After spending 15 years in corporate America, he took a leap of faith into real estate investing. Fast forward to today, he's flipped over 400 properties and built an 8-figure real estate portfolio. Now he's here to reveal how he went from corporate worker to full-time investor by shifting his mindset, sticking to the fundamentals in real estate investing, and how investing in real estate is simple but not easy. Without further delay, please join me in welcoming Jason Prichard. Welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you for having me, man. I'm excited for this one. This should be good.
Yeah, no, I've been looking forward to this one for quite a while. I know you and I have run in circles for a while, and I know as part of Deal Champs Summit last year. I'm looking forward to it again, and was able to even participate in one of your local events down in Stockton recently. So love what you have to say, and I wanted to get my audience exposed to more of your wisdom.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. We've been it's been a great working relationship. I love PropertyRadar as a tool. I think it's going to be great. I'm sure we'll get into that and talk about the journey and how I've used it. Honestly, since the beginning, this has been a tool that has been in my toolbox since day one, and it has not left in 11 years, man. So it should be a cool full circle moment to talk about this thing today.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I want to focus a lot on you and on your business because, you've just crushed. And so, you came out of a corporate world. I think you were working at the CompUSA and then and things like that. And so very much in like a sales forward capacity. What made you take the leap from corporate world to real estate? What got you fed
it's interesting,
up?
and I'll go back even a little bit further than that, man, because I think the launching pad that got me here started even prior to that. So after I graduated high school, I had a son when I was really young. I was 19 going on 20 when my son was born. And so I was working for that company, CompUSA, but not in a sales-based position. I was just a job out of high school. I was just doing something while I was going to college. My life changed very quickly. And I said to myself, I think I was making like $4.25 an hour. And I was like, this is not going to be enough to support, me and a newborn baby. And so I started looking for other opportunities, and all the people that made the most money at the place that I worked were all in sales positions. It was the sales manager, the sales guys. They wore the nice clothes, they had the nice cars, they had the money. And so I just immediately got attracted to that. And I started in the outside sales department. So we had a storefront, but in the back there was offices, and we had a team of people that did business, and we called it our business sales division. And so they were going out. It was all commission based, and it was all B2B sales. So we were going to school districts, doctors' offices, hospitals, anybody that needed technology solutions. And we were knocking on doors, making cold calls, and basically pitching our products and our services. And I cut my teeth doing that. And I just took to it very naturally. I think I was very motivated because of the situation I was in with life. And so I was like, all right, I've always been a really hard worker, but I think I had some natural skills and abilities, communication skills. I'm naturally kind of a people person. I can get along with, all kinds of different people, and that worked to my advantage. And I went from making like $4 an hour, no joke, to making like $100,000 a year by the time I was like 21, 22. And I moved very quickly into sales and then into sales management, and life just took off for me. And I was like, dude, this is it. I found it. Like, I found the thing that I was going to do. I got into a management track pretty quickly. And I thought that that's what my life was going to be. I thought that I was going to work in corporate America. I was going to work maybe some regional sales director, or maybe go to a corporate office, make a few $100,000 a year, and just, that was going to be my life. And as I was climbing the corporate ladder, I just got more and more disenchanted with all the stuff that everybody gets disenchanted with when they work in large organizations like that, right? There's people that you don't necessarily like working with. You're not always on board with the vision, and I just ultimately, at the end of the day, my heart was not into what we were doing. It was fun and we made money, and I enjoyed the people that I worked with on a day-to-day basis, but I didn't really have a passion for selling technology products or services. So after about 8 years, I thought it was an issue with the company. So I left, went to another company, and basically went through another 7-year cycle where I repeated the same thing. I thought it was like, hey, if I go to a new environment, the grass is going to be greener. Did the same thing. Got to another place, got very successful, worked my way up. And I found myself in my early 30s in a spot where I was just very unhappy with my life. I was projecting a lot of unhappiness into my marriage, into my relationship with my kids. And ultimately, it came down to the fact, Mark, that, I knew that I was put on this earth to do more than what I was doing. And I just didn't know what it was. I was always intrigued by the idea of real estate investing. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad like everybody did. I got that into that when I was young. I was always intrigued by that idea. I had lots of buddies that made money in that run up of 2005, 6, 7, 8, 9. Right. I had everybody that I knew was in mortgages, and they were agents, and everybody had 5 or 6 houses. And I never got into the business then. But the timing, I always say it's God's timing, man. For me, it was, in 2012, I basically was just at this point where I felt like if I don't make a decision right now, then it's probably never going to happen. And,
right, you just get trapped.
I just reached this transitionary report. I sat down with my wife and I said, hey, if I don't do this now, we're never going to do it. And we put a plan together, and she said, you've got a year to figure this out. And I left my corporate job, burned the boats, like Tony Robbins says. And, we haven't looked back since, man. That was in 2014. So we're going on year 11 now. And it's been a wild ride ever since then.
So back me up. I mean, when you were maybe going back to CompUSA, when you were had the early success as a salesperson, you saw your income boom. And then just like every other corporate thing, they say, oh, here's a successful salesperson. Let's put him in sales management. Like, how was that transition for you? I mean, was that also a fairly easy one, or all of a sudden you're thrust with...
It wasn't easy.
Different.
That's a really good question. And I don't know that anybody's asked me that. It wasn't easy because I was 23 when I got put into the management position. And so I did not have like the business acumen and the people skills and the patience and a lot of the just maturity that I have right now. I was just kind of thrust into the position because, it was a pretty volatile time back then in our company, and the current manager left, and, they were basically like, I was one of 3 guys that was there, and I was the highest performing sales agent. So they just said, hey, guess what? You're the manager now. And so I think that ended up being one of my biggest blessings, because I do have, I think, some natural leadership and management abilities that I didn't know existed back then that were in me. And that situation forced me to perform. And one of the things that I've learned about myself, Mark, is that I'm the type of person that actually performs better under pressure. And so when you put me in a situation where I'm operating without a safety net, I usually rise to the occasion in those type of things. And those early experiences where I was probably the youngest sales manager in the company at that time. This was, older people, and I was managing a group of older guys that were there, and I was the new guy on the block. I was kind of a little bit of a hot shot, you know what I'm saying? And I had to step in and, deal with some guys that were grizzled salespeople that had been in the industry for a long time, and they weren't necessarily interested in taking orders from some 23-year-old kid that just, started a couple months ago. So exactly. I learned a lot. I cut my teeth there, but looking back at that time, it's just, so many emotions, man, looking at that 15-year history. Like, I learned so much that has direct application to what I'm doing now. Yeah. And thinking back, I always talk about how much I disliked it, but I didn't realize how much preparation I was getting from being in that position. And really all the stuff that I learned 100 times more working in those environments that I did going to college. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't really apply anything that I learned from school, but I apply so many learning lessons, so many leadership lessons and managerial lessons, sales lessons, from when I was, working those 15 years in corporate America. So it really was a blessing in disguise looking back on it now. I wouldn't change anything. Yeah.
Did they teach you certain sales methodologies that you have used now in this experience, or
No, they didn't teach us anything. They said, here's your goal, here's the target,
figure it out.
You guys are just going to have to go figure it out, honestly. And there was not like formal sales training. I mean, nowadays, this was 2000. God, when was this? This is like 2003, 4, 5. I mean, the internet and like social media was not a thing back then. The internet is not what it was today. You know what I mean? Like, we're barely on the cusp of transitioning to where like high-speed internet was like a normal thing. You know what I mean? And so there wasn't access to all of this readily available information. So any sales training we got was like somebody that flew in from corporate like once, or twice a year, and they gave us something, but it's like, it's not anything that really stuck. And so we just kind of had to fly by the seat of our pants. And figure it out as we go. And I learned to build that, that hustle muscle that you need in sales, where you just have to go out and get after it. And when you work in a commission-based income, and it's just eat what you kill. It's like, you have to go out there and get after it. And it's not for everybody, dude. And so, fortunately for me, I took to it. And again, I always draw a line back to, I just perform well under pressure in any aspect in my life. When you put pressure and there's high stakes, right? Like, I typically rise to that occasion. I was doing it since those moments. It was like, man, I was 19, 20, making minimum wage, no money, no nothing, no financial resources. And I was like, I have to do something to change my life. And so I was like, bam, let me just go try this. You know what I mean? And then that worked. And then let me move into management. And then that worked. And so it was just constantly, putting myself in those type of positions where it's back against the wall. And, it worked out for me.
Yeah. Whether by design or not. I mean, it seemed like just somebody who's going to rise to the occasion. And so you had these forcing factors, whether it be having a child or making $4 an hour, trying to even put yourself through school, much less pay for a family. Yeah.
Yep.
I like that. I'm a big believer in that. I think I was talking to your partner, Dean, about, just even having multiple kids, right? The more kids you have, oftentimes more success follows because you're pushed to a new height. So
Dean's definitely in an interesting spot. My kids are 22 and 24. So my wife and I are empty nesters now, which is interesting. I know, like, Dean and a lot of my other buddies have a bunch of little kids running around the house. Yeah, so we're in a different season of our life right now for sure. That's it's interesting to see the comparison. Yeah, but that was like, I felt a very strong sense of responsibility even before my first son was born, where I was like, man, I have to get it together. Like, I cannot, like, it's not okay for me to just be staying in this space. And I've always been driven by that. I've always been driven. My wife and I joke about, that we say my love language is providing for my family. And I really thrive in that type of situation. And, well. I just get a charge as a man, I feel great that I'm the provider, and I've always been like that. And so that's always been a motivating factor for me in corporate America, business in general, all those things. Yeah.
So you said that you kind of, when you made the transition to real estate, you were around these guys that were driving nice cars, wearing nice watches, all this stuff. How were you running in those circles? I mean, how did you go from being this kind of computer space to running in circles with real estate folks besides reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
I mean, I honestly, I dove in without knowing anything. And I don't know that that's the right approach for everybody. But what I do know is that most people that I meet that want to transition from, let's call it corporate America, into real estate, they waste too much time and get stuck in that paralysis analysis stage where they overeducate themselves. They want to learn everything before they get started. And again, thinking about, like, knowing and being self-aware and saying, hey, I'm the type of person that operates well under pressure. We did make the decision, and it was a strategic decision because my wife had just graduated from grad school. She got a new counseling job, so she had a little bit of a bump in income, but I was definitely the bigger breadwinner of our family. And so we took a big financial hit when we decided, like, hey, I'm going to not work. We're going to make some big financial adjustments in our life. We're going to live off of my wife's income, and I'm just going to spend a year building the business. And so I wasn't running around any circles. Like all my buddies that were in that space, they all got washed out because I started in really taking this serious in 2013, and I quote unquote started in 2014. So by that time, everything had already crashed. Yeah. And now we were starting to see, things pick back up, but I missed all that big opportunity in 9, 10, 11 when you could just buy stuff for pennies on the dollar. Like, now looking back in hindsight, I still made some great buys, when I first started, but I didn't know anybody that was successful in real estate because all my buddies, everybody was making fast money back then. And then they all went and got regular jobs. And so I just jumped in and I did, I call it the YouTube University route because I did not have money to pay for coaching, for education, for anything like that. I was just like, I'm going to have to figure this out on my own. And I remember Bigger Pockets obviously is a huge resource that a lot of people go on. I would just absorb everything that I could from Bigger Pockets podcast and the forum. And there was another guy, you probably know him. He's out of Phoenix. His name is Sean Terry. Sure. And Sean had a podcast at the time where, there wasn't a ton of real estate content available like that in 2014. And he had a podcast about acquiring off-market properties and wholesaling and fix and flipping. And that's what really I wanted to do. I didn't want to become an agent. Even though I did eventually get licensed, I wanted to invest and I wanted to flip properties. And I stumbled upon Sean Terry's podcast, and he had like this 5-episode series of like every step that you needed to do to contact sellers directly off market, because it was just, I learned that buying off market is where you got the best deals, because I would constantly go to Zillow and Realtor. And my process to try to find deals, it's funny now thinking about it, I would just go every day. I'd sort in my city by cheapest house to most expensive, and I would just run numbers on the very cheapest properties. And I was like, dude, I can't buy this anywhere close to what they're asking because the numbers don't make sense. And then I would stumble around and I'd call agents and I'd be like, well, I think I can offer like half of what you guys have it for. And they would just laugh in my face and hang up. And I quickly learned I needed to start finding off-market opportunities. And Sean Terry's podcast is really where I learned. And I treated it like like school. I treated it like formal education. I would go onto his podcast, and he literally had 5 steps: how you do your marketing, how you run your deals, what you need to do when you go on an appointment, how you negotiate an offer, and then how you sell the deals. And it was like each one of those episodes was like an hour, 2 hours long, and it was all the steps. And I just started with step 1, dude. And I was like, all right, marketing step 1, let me figure out how to do that. And I was hanging up bandit signs every weekend. I was handwriting letters. I was making calls. I was calling for sale by owner. I was just doing all the stuff that you do, driving for dollars, like all the stuff that you do at the beginning, and just hustling to try to find deals. And that's what my business was for that first year, man. You know what I mean? We worked 9 or 10 months until I got my very first deal. And this was me working every single day, dude. So this was like all day. I'd take my kids to school in the morning. I'd work all day. I'd pick them up. I'd come back. I'd work some more. And that was my life every day. And it was a big culture shock coming out of corporate America, because I was so used to working and then making income every 2 weeks, like getting trade. By that time I was on salary, right? So it wasn't just, I was getting a regular steady income, and to work all day and then for months not get paid, dude, that was a tough pill for me to swallow. And I think a lot of people don't realize how big of a shock that is when they first make that transition from trading time for money to becoming a business owner, self-employed entrepreneur. You don't get paid in this business until you learn how to produce a result. And if you can't produce a result, guess what? There's not going to be any money coming in for a little while. You know what I mean? And most people are just not prepared for that mentally. They're not prepared for that financially. There is no savings or runway to kind of get them through some of those lean periods at the beginning, right? And you need to give it a year. That's what I tell most people. It's like, if you want to give yourself an honest shot at this business and find success, you have to give it 12 months. And don't look up and check the score of the game until you've been in the game for 12 months. Because if you do it after 30 days, you know, you're not even in the game 30 days in. You're still on Monday afternoon's practice. You know what I'm saying? And that's the analogy that I use, to use a sports analogy. It's like you're not even ready to play the game a month in. You're just barely getting your legs underneath you.
So where does this commitment and fortitude from Jason Prichard come from? And this is obviously going even back before college and having an early child, but what forged this in you? I mean, you have like just a crazy level of discipline.
Honestly, man, I think it's my family and how I grew up. My mom is an immigrant. She immigrated to this country. I moved here when I was 5 years old. I didn't speak any English. My dad's always been a really hard worker. And I think it's just ingrained in me, like hard work. Like my dad always worked. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, but she worked her ass off. And so it's like, I always knew, like, go to school, work really hard, get good grades. I did all of that stuff. I was a great student, like all of those things. And so I worked hard from very early on. I had jobs like when I was 10, 11 years old. I started working when I was 15. I have never been without a job since I was 15 years old. And so for me, it was always something that you work, you know what I mean? And so work ethic has never been a problem for me. I just was in the wrong vehicle. And I think that's what's most people's problem is. I think there's some people where they're just, they're lazy and they don't want to work, but most people are not like that. I don't think. I think a lot of people, if you put them in the right vehicle, they'll go. And like, if you look at how many quote unquote hours I put in now versus like what I used to actually do, I work twice as much, like as far as hours now, but I love it, dude. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel like work, at least the way work used to feel like for me when I was stuck in my office back in, my old corporate days. And so, for me, I love it. And I've got to push myself away from the desk sometimes because it's like, all right, this is enough today. You've done enough for today. Right now, we've got to go focus on family and the other things that are important. And so I think the advice, and again, this was another thing that was ingrained into me by my dad. My dad always told me, my grandpa was a really hard worker, but he hated his job. And my dad, fortunately for him, he was a teacher and he loved teaching. He loved education, very passionate about it. And he's like, son, you just need to find something that you love to do. And he always ingrained that to me. And it took me a while to figure out what that was. But when I found real estate, like, this is it. Like, I found what I was meant to do here. And when that clicks, it just like, bam, it just opens up all these different doors. And then you just are moving at a completely different speed and pace of life.
Jason, besides the vehicle, what did you learn about yourself in those early work years that, opened your eyes and maybe changed your perspective on that, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur, and hey, I want to get into a whole different thing? What was that learning for you?
Some of the biggest lessons I learned, Mark, was that even though I had some great things that were instilled into me by my family, like work ethic, there was a lot of limiting beliefs and a lot of lack of self-confidence and self-doubt and negative programming, honestly, that I had to overcome. And so much of what I think most people struggle with, and this with me, was just that negative voice and those limiting belief systems, and working on changing the message that's going on up here every single day. And when you make a transition from, I was great in my old job. Like, I was always high performer, getting all the awards, making all the money. It wasn't like I sucked at what I was doing. I was really good at what I was doing. My heart wasn't in it.
Right.
So to go from that to something completely brand new that I was not good at, even though the fundamentals of like finding off-market deals, talking to sellers, it's ultimately a sales and marketing business on the front end of what our business is and what I do now. I was all really good at that, but whenever you transition to something new, you're not going to be good at the beginning, right? And so when you get into that spot, when you're uncomfortable, I think that negative voice gets really loud. And what I had to learn was how to quiet that voice. And what I had to learn was not to get in my head. And what I had to learn was I had lots of limiting beliefs and scarcity about money. And I only believed that I was worthy of making this much money. And a lot of that had to do with just the way that I was raised and my financial upbringing in my family. And I had to unpack a lot of that. I had to reprogram and rewire a lot of that. And I'm a big believer in mindset. And I think, whatever standard you set in your life, financially, health-wise, whatever, that's the cap. And so if you just learn how to set a higher standard up here, you and your business will eventually grow and progress. And that was where I spent a lot of my time. That's where
How did you learn that? How did you learn that? Who did you model after? What you just said is super profound, but it's much easier said than done.
It is.
So
it is.
How did you, first of all, maybe give us a perspective on what was that negative talk for you, and then how did you overcome that, and how did you reframe your mindset?
I was in a spot where I was just really down in that. I was in a bad spot mentally that period of 2012, 13, 14, right? You don't just make these like wholesale life-changing decisions usually when things are good. It's usually when things are bad, and things were really bad for me at that time, right? And so, when you reach this kind of rock bottom moment, and there was lots of other things kind of happening in my life that we can fill a whole nother episode with all of that stuff, where I was just like, dude, this cannot be what the rest of my life is going to be like. There's just no way. And so when you reach those depths and you're at those really low points, it forces you to reflect and look internally and say, man, I've been taught my entire life, work really hard, get good grades, get a job, go to school, then get a job, then work until you're 60 or 70. And at that point, you can enjoy life, right? And
right.
I was coming to grips to the fact that, like, man, maybe this was this whole, like, life system and belief system that I've, like, bought into. Maybe this is wrong. And I definitely didn't feel like it was for me. You know what I mean? And I was like, dude, I'm seeing other people, like, go down these different paths that kind of felt like they were more aligned with what my long-term vision for my life was. And I had to look internally first and say to myself, this way of thinking that's got me here, this way of thinking is not going to get me to where I want to go. It is only going to continue to yield the same results that we're getting right now. So if I want a different result, I'm going to have to start thinking differently. And what I've learned is everything that happens externally in our reality is just a reflection of who we are internally. So I've never been a victim, but I think sometimes, and I think at that point in my life was probably when I was blaming and projecting a lot of stuff on other people, right? Oh, it's my boss, or it's my company, or it's my wife, or it's this, right? I had to take responsibility and say, no, dude, all these outcomes, Jason, that are happening in your life are 100% because of you. And until you become self-aware and realize that everything that's happening in your life has a direct line back to you, it's really hard to change, because when you project it on other people, it requires the other person or the other external thing to change. And that, guess what? That's never going to happen.
Control that.
The boss is never going to change. This person's never going to change. You don't have any control over that anyways, right? And one of the things I did pick up from corporate America from one of my bosses is control the controllables. He always used to tell us, just control and what you can control is the person that's staring you in the mirror every day. You can control how you think, how you feel, and how you act. And once I got that under control and I started paying attention to my thoughts, my feelings, and then the actions that followed after that, I was just a really negative person, dude. You know what I'm saying? I just had such a negative outlook, and everything was just bad, and I had a negative thought process. And most people don't realize that they're just running that tape on autopilot every single day, and they wonder why nothing changes. And so I had to start with myself internally. The how I changed was I've always been into self-improvement to a certain extent, right?
Okay.
And I read a couple different books. Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. There's another book that is Secrets of the Millionaire Mind by T. Harv Eker. And I remember reading that book specifically, right? And he talks about you need the right vehicle, you need the right and then you need the right system. And this is what's the operating system that's going on in your head. And it basically talked about changing, like looking at your mind and your body as a computer. And I related to that because I'd been in the technology field, right? So this is the hardware and your beliefs and your thought process, and that's the operating system. And if we can change the operating system that's going on in here, then the hardware will perform better. And if the hardware performs better, then the results that come from that will perform better. And so I just started to change the way that I was thinking. And I ultimately just said to myself, look, the way you're doing this right now isn't working. So what is it going to hurt to try something new? It doesn't cost you anything. You accept a little bit of time, right? A little bit of effort and a little bit of work. It doesn't cost you any money. Like, why not just try? And so I literally just brainwashed myself for success. That's the easiest way that I can put it. I would, instead of watching movies and listening to the same music that I was listening, all of which was negative and like not really good and not promoting healthy messages, when I was working out, when I was driving in my car, I had like a motivation, like self-improvement playlist on YouTube. And it was like all my favorite speakers is like Jim Rohn and Les Brown and Tony Robbins and Bob Proctor and like all these guys. And it's crazy what happens when all you start doing is just flip the content that you start listening. And it's just this empowering message that you're like, man, I can do this and I'm great and I am. And like, then you start practicing that stuff, you'll just feel better. And I just started to feel, that was the first thing that I noticed, man. It was just, I started to feel better than what I was feeling. And that was a good enough starting point for me because I felt not good at that point in my life, right? And so I started feeling better about myself. And as I started feeling better about myself, I started getting more confident in my ability in this new venture that I was in. And again, going all the way back to me, it started with me. I fixed what was going on with me first, then I fixed the actions that I was doing, and then those actions started to yield positive results. And then it's just this forward momentum, and it creates this really cool feedback loop that just constant positive reinforcement. And I was like, all right, this is working even better. So let's just do more of this. And I'm the kind of guy that follows instructions very well, dude. I like structure. If you give me a blueprint and you just tell me what to do, I will do it. I don't need to change the recipe for success. And so once I found something that worked, I was just off to the races and running. And you know, there's been lots of challenges along the ways, man. Those first few years, dude, it was like an emotional roller coaster kind of dealing with all the ups and downs. But we made it, dude. We made it out of the other end. But that was the start for me at the beginning.
That's an awesome story. I really appreciate you telling it. I mean, for people that are facing that maybe they're already entrepreneurs and they're just facing like this imposter syndrome or their self-doubt and these kind of negative talk tracks, as you say, like, What's your recommendation? How should somebody break through and change that for themselves?
You have to become self-aware. I'm going to give you a couple different things, but self-awareness is the most important thing. If you don't even realize that you're doing this, there's not even going to be an opportunity for you to step in and change. So self-awareness is number one. And the easiest way to become self-aware is, I've heard it described as this: use your feelings or your emotions as your GPS and your guide, right? So if you are feeling anxious or worried or self-doubt or guilt or depression or anger, those are low-level, low vibrational feelings and emotions. That should be your very first indicator that something is wrong, right? And so if you notice that, then you've just got to stop. And you got to take 30 seconds, a minute, 10 minutes, however long it takes. You got to stop whatever it is that you're doing. You can't just get into your routine of just going and dealing with it and say, why am I feeling this? And take an inventory of, where is this coming from? Am I stressed about a business deal that I need to do? Am I stressed about finances? Am I stressed about my marriage? And why is that? And then I've heard Tony Robbins refer to it as a pattern interrupt. We need to insert a new thought process or a new feeling or a new emotion that is empowering, that's propelling you to where you want to go, not continuing to hold you back, right? So most people struggle when they're starting a new business, right? So that's why I say proof of concept. And when I say proof of concept, getting to deal number one is the most important thing for most new investors. We have to get to proof of concept as fast as possible, because then we don't have to live in this space of blind faith. We can live off of a real world result. You know what I'm saying? We can say,
uncertainty.
I don't have just confidence that I can do this. I've actually done it. So now I can tell my mind with a pattern interrupt, like, no, I did this already, so I don't have to question whether or not it's done because I've already done it. Now I'm going to keep doing the things that got me this result, and I'm going to stay there. And the more that you do that, the quieter that negative voice becomes. And what we need to do is get the positive, empowering message to outweigh the self-limiting message, right? And the more that we can do that, the faster we get momentum in our lives. The other thing that you can do is change the people that you're around. And I think you hear that, it's kind of cliche, but it's 100% proven to be true in my life. You're the average of the 5 people that you spend around.
That's right.
If you're not around people that are doing the things that you want to do, you kind of need to audit your social circle and maybe take a look. And are the people that, a lot of the people that I was around that were my friends were very negative people. And no wonder I was negative. They were my coworkers. We will all get together and then dogpile on our boss and the company and like all this stuff. And it was just this negative, all this stuff. And I had really good friends that were not like they were losers, but you know, we all made about the same amount of money, all like, you know, like it was just, we all were right about the same place in life. And I wanted to be up here, and I needed to just get around people that were doing the things that I wanted to do. And it's never been easier to find a new tribe than it is right now. And you know this because you've come to events like ours. You can go right now to meetup.com, social media, whatever. And if it's real estate that you want to do, never been easier to find other real estate investors in your market. So that's not an excuse anymore. And then you just got to get outside of your comfort zone, show up and interact with those people and start building out this new tribe. And it's not going to happen overnight, but if you're building your business for the long haul, slowly but surely, you're going to find those people that you connect with and that you vibe with, and you'll start to make these true, genuine relationships that can last over time. And those people will become your new sphere of influence. And you practice that self-awareness, the pattern interrupt, and inserting those new things, plus you start spending time with people, man, lots of really cool, amazing things will happen if you start doing that on a consistent basis.
Excellent advice. One of the things I've been impressed with you is, I mean, you kind of have this saying like, hey, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I think it just, to me, what I've taken from that is that you're like, hey, the systems, as you've described, or these processes are not brand new shiny object, but just kind of the blocking and tackling, but doing it with consistency and good execution. Tell me more. I mean, how did you arrive at that? Why weren't you going and trying all these crazy things? Why did you just stick to the system, and why do you still feel that that's the right thing for people to do?
I think the blueprint, the proven model for success, let's just call it, in my specific business model, fix and flipping, wholesaling, rental portfolio, that type of stuff, there is not some proprietary secret sauce magic button that is there that only, a few people have. It is already, it's very easy to find out the proven methods that work. And I think the reason why I just stuck with that stuff is because going back to that period where I was really down in my life, I just modeled what other successful people were doing as far as the way that they think. And then that worked out for me, right? So I said to myself, hey, why not just model what other successful people are doing? And let's not get into shiny object syndrome. Let's just go with the tried and true foundational things that we know that work. And let's just stick with that. And then when you layer that on top of like a consistent, like never-ending work ethic, that drive that I have, right? And you just take that and you put those two things together, and I'm like a dog with them. I just do not give up, dude. And so for me, I like, once you give me something, I am just going to go until it happens. You know what I'm saying? And so you sprinkle a little bit of that in there and it just works, man. And I think most people that struggle with this business, they're looking for a shortcut. They're looking for a quick and easy answer. And this is hard, dude. I always say real estate investing is simple, but it's not easy. And I believe that. If you can add, subtract, multiply, divide, and you're not afraid to talk to people, you're not afraid of rejection, you'll do great at real estate investing, because those are really the main foundational skill sets. You need to be okay with talking people, basic math to underwrite and analyze a deal. And that's it. You know what I'm saying? So that's why real estate always spoke to me, because you don't need to be some quant to like understand financial records of a company, to analyze like all these different things to invest in. That was just never something that intrigued me. It was like kind of over my head. I was like, I just need a simple path to get to where I want to go. And I feel like real estate is the investment vehicle for the everyman. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's the vehicle that anybody can do, right? That have that blue collar work ethic, that are not afraid to give up, that are not afraid to do these things that we're talking about, that I think can unlock financial freedom for everybody. And I'm a big proponent of that, man. I think, there's so many people that are stuck, especially now. Like, look at where we're at now as a society, and that gap between the haves and the have. It's just widening and widening and widening. And it's up to you. Like, it isn't like your company doesn't care. Like, they don't, if you quit or you die or God forbid something happens to you, the company is just going to find somebody else, dude. And the sooner you come to grips with that, the better. And it's okay. I mean, it just is what it is. That's the nature of the way that our system and our society is. So what does that mean? It's your responsibility as an individual to be in charge of your future and your family's financial future. And you can't just like push certain percentage of your check into a 401k and cross your fingers and hope that everything's going to be okay when you're 70 years old, because that's not a plan, guys. That's just a prayer. And so we've got to get a little bit more intentional about what we're doing here. So
do you think then, to that point, I mean, do you think that the folks that are struggling in real estate investing, are these people that haven't, well, it's not that they haven't found, but maybe they haven't adopted the right structure, or is it more about the discipline?
It's more about this. It's the story that's going on in their head, dude. It's not, again, people want to overcomplicate real estate as an excuse for why they weren't able to stay disciplined and not be able to reconcile some of these limiting beliefs that are in their head. I believe most people are, unfortunately, they just self-sabotage. They're their own worst enemy. And even if you give them the complete roadmap, not a watered down version of the roadmap, I'm talking about stop by stop, everything that you need to do. The vast majority of people, honestly, they just won't do it because they don't have the drive, the work ethic, the discipline to just stick with it until they get the result that they want. That was, I see people coming into this business for sometimes a little bit of the wrong reasons, because it's just the shortcut. They want fast money. And social media can be a double-edged sword, because you see, 20-year-old kid on the internet wholesaling, and they make it look like, oh, this is the easiest thing in the world. And then when you get into it and you're like, oh, I got to make 300 calls a day, every single day for 6 months without getting paid, most people are just not prepared to deal with that. You know what I'm saying? And I got to go knock on doors and get my door slammed in my face by people that are going through foreclosure, or I've got to spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars a month on inbound marketing to get a higher quality lead, which most new people probably shouldn't do or are not ready to do, right? You have to pick your poison a little bit. And so there is no other way around it. Like, these are the routes that you have to go down, and you have to just be ready to deal with that. But the cost, that's your cost of admission. That's the cost of entry. But what you get on the other side of that is just it's like the way I feel, Mark, now is like the life that I've been living for the last 11, this is what life was supposed to feel like. And that's the best way that I can describe it, man. Like the way that I feel right now is this is how life was always meant to live, dude. And it's just such an amazing feeling. So having to make a few calls, having to get a few doors slammed in your face, having to take a risk and spend a little bit of money, dude, that's worth it because you got to pay a cost in the old way of life too, dude. Both of those things have a price of admission, man. You know what I'm saying? And you're going to pay it one way or another. So it's up to you on how you want to do it, right? And so for me, I think it's just do what you need to do to get through that early stage. And once you get to that proof of concept, lots of really cool things happen after that first domino falls down. And then you get some real momentum, and then, you know, you're kind of off to the races after that. The work's just getting started. It's not over yet, but you know, you have a lot more positive momentum once you get there.
Love that. You mentioned just kind of that, you know, the amount of money you have to invest for the inbounds. I don't think the inbound is necessarily evil or bad, but I agree. It's costly and it's one at bat. You haven't done anything then to kind of establish your brand. I'm a big proponent about outbound, like targeted outbound. Is that what you would recommend is where people start is, you know, the door knocking, the phone calls? I mean, this is the...
I do. I think a lot of it is going to depend on, I think I'm a big proponent of treating your business like a business. If you want it to perform like a business, you have to sit down and look at it and treat it like a business. So you need to sit down and decide how much money do I have to invest, time and money, to what are the resources collectively that I have to invest in my business. And let's look at marketing, for example, right? Marketing is in place to get leads to come in, right? And so for me, as you're doing your marketing, those leads will come in and then you take them through a sales process to convert those into deals, and then those deals eventually turn into revenue. And so my biggest competitive advantage is all of that stuff was what I had been doing for 15 years. So when you put me in that seat and it clicked very early on, like this is the same exact thing that I've been doing. All I'm doing is instead of selling some technology product or service, we're buying and selling houses, but everything else is the same. It was like, you know, a fish to water at that point, right? But most people, if you're a teacher or an engineer or you've never like dealt with any of that before, you don't realize like how much rejection you're going to deal with at the beginning, even if you're really good. And if you suck, the rejection is going to be 10 times more, dude. So I get people that'll be like, yeah, you know, I called for a couple days and, you know, I talked to like 5 people and all of them hung up on me. And I said, dude, you need to talk to 500 people. Do you need to talk to 5,000 people and then come back? And then let's have a discussion about where you're at and what results came out of that, right? And so
that's
I think outbound is great because it gives you low-cost reps. It gives you low-cost practice, right? Exactly. Because if you're not good at the beginning, what you need is experience, man. And you can only role play so many times and you can only kind of do it in a vacuum. There's no substitute for real, like I call it, like you're in the trenches with live ammunition, you're talking to sellers, you're getting your teeth kicked in on the phone, and you have to get grizzled skin. You know what I mean? You have to get like the skin of a rhinoceros and just like get such thick skin. And that can only come with real world reps, and not just the rejection, but all the nuances of what do I say and what's the framework of a call and how do I start it and what are all the steps. And you got to outbound, especially things like cold calling. It gets you lots of low cost reps. Like you said it with mail, like we send out 35,000 pieces of mail, costs us about $20,000 a month. And if we're lucky, we'll get 12 to 15 qualified leads a week from that amount of marketing spend per week, just from mail. Everything else comes from some of our other marketing. But think about that, right? Like we have this crazy marketing budget, this big system, all these tools, all these team members just to try to catch 12 sellers in our funnel. And we're spending 20 grand, right? If you're only spending $500 or $1,000, you may have one opportunity a month. That's not enough, guys. That is not enough. That's not enough practice, right? And that's why a lot of people quit, because they'll do mail, but they'll do their really small batches. You know, most of the people are like, F you, take me off the list, which is also normal too. And then the one person that might be a lead, they don't even know what to say to them. So they fumble that opportunity, and then they pick up the phone and call Jason's team, and they wonder why 2 weeks later Jason's buying the house, right? It's because we spent a lot of this time in practice. So I do believe outbound is a great way to start, especially if you're on a budget, because it's cost effective, plus it gets you lots of real world experience, which most people are lacking. And that's what you need at the beginning. You need reps.
Totally agree with that. I also love door knocking for the same reason. It's like
Yeah.
this immediate, I mean, you can't do as many reps, unfortunately, but you get that immediate face-to-face interaction and learning, and then you can get better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people actually prefer in-person interaction if it's cold, I've seen, which as opposed to calling. I cut my teeth calling in my old job. So for me, it's just a more of an efficiency thing. I could just talk to more people on the phone. So I always like calling better because I can call hundreds of sellers in the time it's going to take me to go knock 10 doors. You know what I'm saying? And so just from the opportunity cost of my time, I liked it. But I do. Some people, and especially if you're using a tool like Radar to door knock people that have more built-in motivation there, you can actually yield the result like faster, the outcome faster, because you're talking to people that unfortunately are on a much tighter timeline to sell, right? If they have an auction coming up in a couple weeks, unfortunately, they're going to have to sell that house to somebody. So that's a good way to put yourself in front of people that are ready to sell right now. Whereas cold calling, typically, you've got a 6+ month lead conversion cycle from the very first conversation to when they sign. So, you have to be ready and understand the differences in some of these nuances. And really, that's why I say give it a year. Because if you're only doing cold calling, and industry standards tell us it's a 6-month conversion cycle from the very first conversation to the time they talk, and you give up 90 days in, you haven't even given yourself enough time to get to where you want to go. So again, treating it like a business, understanding and being knowledgeable about how all of these things work and applying some of these best practices on a solid foundation, I think is the right way to start.
Awesome. Tell me how people can find more about you. I mean, both your coaching as well as even just following your success as an investor. But how can people connect with you?
Yeah, the best place to get in contact with me is social media. We're really active on social, Instagram and Facebook. If you just put my name in there, Jason Prichard. We shared the good, the bad, and the ugly, man. So we're really active on there. I really like to use my social media as a platform to motivate and inspire and educate the Jason from 10, 11, 12 years ago, man. I just, how it is, man. Like all of this travel, all of the work and effort and energy it is to get up on stage and speak in front of big crowds. It's a lot, dude. And we don't like this. That is not a profit center for us, dude. Like that is definitely a labor of love, but we do it because I always, after speaking or after, sharing openly and being vulnerable on social media, I always have these really amazing interactions with people that are like, dude, like, I've been following you for 2 years. I just bought my first rental property, or I've been following you for such and such time. And, I decided to make the leap about a year ago and we just closed this amount of deals. And it's just, that's the fulfillment that I get. So if you just want to connect and see more about what we're doing, go there. If you want any resources and you really are ready to kind of take a serious look at this, if you go to my website, it's jasonprichard.com. We give away a really robust tool of free resources. Right on the very homepage, you can click our free toolkit. And I mean, it's like 14 different things. It's a 10-page step-by-step guide on how to get started. Every single document that we use in our business, all of our contracts, all of our assignment agreements, all of our scripts, all the documents that we use with our private lenders. It's basically our business in a box. These are not watered down versions of the things. These are the things my team uses every single day to analyze deals, to sign deals up, all that stuff. We give all that stuff away for free. So if you go to jasonprichard.com, you have all that there, and you can always reach out to me on any one of those platforms. I'm happy to help and be a resource if I can be.
Thanks so much for that. I mean, I love your generosity and paying that forward to people. And I didn't expect to spend as much time talking mindset today, but I love talking about it with you.
I love it.
It's really inspiring.
We'll have to do another one, dude. We can get into the weeds on the business because I love the business stuff too. So maybe part 2, dude, we'll get into the weeds of the business and what we're doing, and hopefully that can be helpful for your audience as well.
Yeah, done and done. Hey, if you like this episode, please be sure to subscribe or pass this along to friends and colleagues that can also find value from this. Thanks for being a part of Local Leverage.